How Hitler turned the youth into Nazi soldiers and the rigorous training they endured ***. First, the youth had to be checked for any Jewish ancestry.
I don't know who my father was.
Sir.
Sir.
I said take off your clothes!
They would be examined thoroughly, and only after confirming no Jewish heritage were they eligible for acceptance.
You are not a Jew, so you can be allowed to live. And you can join this institution.
New recruits were brought into the dormitory, but they had to pick up the uniforms the officers casually threw down, and endure the impolite greetings from their peers. After obediently listening to the officers' instructions for the newcomers, the hellish life would begin.
Give him the traditional welcome.
Run.
In Hitler's eyes, a person with average intelligence but good health was much more valuable than an educated but physically weak person. Therefore, he placed great emphasis on the physical training of soldiers. An excellent German soldier must have a strong physique. They had to jump from ladders, with other classmates catching them with flags. However, mistakes were inevitable, and some ended up with broken arms. These injured recruits were quickly taken away by officers, preventing them from showing pain in front of their peers. They had to run continuously every day, and various competitions were held. Winners not only received various honors but also had the chance to meet the Führer. Through almost fanatical physical training, a large number of war fanatics were cultivated. Werner not only underwent this high-intensity training daily but also had to study radio operations. He needed to assemble a transceiver within an hour. However, he had an exceptional talent for radio technology. Even the officers were captivated by his fluid movements. As he completed the assembly in just 53 seconds, the school would spare no effort in nurturing talented individuals.
Age is just a number. Genius is a gift.
Werner was quickly promoted to a signalman and dispatched to the Eastern Front. He discovered hundreds of radio channels and traced the locations of transceivers, but he felt no joy as he witnessed the cruelty of the SS with his own eyes. They not only shot the broadcasters but also killed ordinary civilians, just like today's war criminals committing similar atrocities. Eventually, Werner was transferred to St. Malo in France, tasked with tracking down illegal radio broadcasts, marking the beginning of the story. The series is adapted from the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel All the Light We Cannot See. At that time, the Allies had begun bombing German strongholds, dropping numerous leaflets afterward, warning the city's residents to evacuate immediately. However, the Nazis sealed the exits, preventing all civilians, including themselves, from escaping. They were determined to hold out until the last moment, but they realized that the bombing was a targeted strike. The Allies accurately hit their location, suggesting someone had provided intelligence. The officers asked Werner if he had detected any radio broadcasts from the city that might contain encrypted messages. However, Werner did not admit that he had been listening to a girl's broadcast every day. When the bombs were falling outside, he simultaneously heard the explosions on the radio. This indicated that the girl was in the city. Before attending school, he often secretly listened to a French radio station. The broadcaster taught him simple French and revealed many truths about the world. Such behavior, violating the Führer's regulations, would result in a death sentence if discovered. But his curiosity was irresistible. Since graduating and arriving at the battlefield, he had kept tuning to that channel, but the station remained silent until he arrived in St. Malo. The channel finally revived, but the broadcaster had changed to a girl who only read a book called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea to her audience. Before ending each broadcast, she used the radio to tell her father she would keep her promise to continue broadcasting, informing Daniel in the distance that she was still alive. Now, however, the officer assigned Werner a partner, who also discovered Werner's secret. If the girl's channel was found, she would likely face death.
This is war. One more body added to 50 million. I will do my duty.
I will spare shortwave 1310.
For the sake of his white moonlight, Werner did not hesitate to shoot. Although Werner cleaned up the scene and claimed his partner might have died in a new round of bombing, the truth was exposed. The officer heard the girl's broadcast. If Werner wasn't the only radio operator left, the officer probably wouldn't have spared him. The officer ordered Werner to atone for his sins by locating the girl's broadcast position, using his sister in the orphanage to threaten him.
I understand you have a sister. Your sister will die too. And she will die very badly.
the girl's broadcast resumed, and following the signal, Werner and the officer found her location. The officer handed Werner a gun and made him walk in front. If there were accomplices, Werner would be the first to die. If not, Werner had to kill the girl himself. As Werner stepped inside, a white-bearded man, Etienne, arrived on a motorcycle. Werner shot and killed the officer, and Etienne took care of the soldiers on the motorcycle. Etienne was a member of the resistance, and he marked new instructions on the girl's door. The Allies relied on the girl's broadcasts for accurate bombing targets. Etienne and Werner disposed of the officer's body, but the girl was not safe yet. Another Nazi officer was also looking for her.
A girl isn't some Malo. A blind girl, no, isn't someone.
The officer, Reinhold, was tasked with collecting precious gems from across Europe and delivering them to the Führer. The girl, named Marie, had something he wanted. He gave the restaurant owner 10 seconds to reveal Marie's address.
That the whole town must know, but who no one can recall!
I have no idea.
3, 2, 1.
Marie is a blind girl living alone in a vast, empty house. Every day after waking up, she touches the wooden models, a gift from Daniel. Daniel condensed the entire city into a set of wooden models, allowing Marie to recognize every street in the town through touch and memory. Daniel once worked at a museum in Paris and loved his daughter deeply. He taught her to feel the world with her hands and ears. Later, when the war broke out and Paris fell, the father and daughter sought refuge at Etienne's house in St. Malo. Daniel also brought the most precious gem from the museum, known as the Sea of Flames. Legend has it that those who touch this gem are cursed, bringing terrible misfortune to those around them, but granting eternal life to its owner.
Can you explain to me why a whole city is running away with nowhere to run to? Can you explain why the Jews are running the fastest? Can you explain why one country wants to own another?
I cannot. Can't explain any of it.
Marie wanted to understand more about the world, and through a radio broadcaster, she learned about the vastness of it. The channel she often listened to was the same one Werner frequently tuned into. Daniel's uncle, Etienne, warmly welcomed the father and daughter. To Marie's surprise, Etienne was the broadcaster she often listened to. She immediately recognized Etienne's voice. Etienne was once a soldier, and the ravages of war left his body scarred. After World War I, he began broadcasting to share his knowledge and promote peace. When the city was occupied by the Nazis, he joined the resistance, using the radio to provide intelligence to the military. Seeing Marie's interest in radio, Etienne started teaching this blind girl. To help Marie get familiar with the town quickly, Daniel began measuring the dimensions of all the streets and created a wooden model of the town for her. However, this action led a merchant in the town to mistakenly believe he was a spy, measuring the town for Allied bombers, and reported him to the occupying German forces. Upon learning that Daniel was making models for his daughter, a Nazi officer threatened Marie with a knife to prove she was blind. Daniel produced fake identification, forged by a colleague from the museum before they left. Now he was a carpenter from Paris. Nonetheless, the Germans rigorously sent his identification to Paris for verification. The Nazis were searching for Daniel because only he knew where the museum's valuable items had been sent. To prevent his true identity from being exposed, Daniel, with the help of Etienne's resistance, returned to Paris, spreading false information about his whereabouts, claiming he and his daughter had fled to Spain with the gem. He then returned to St. Malo to live under a false identity. Marie kept her promise to Daniel by speaking to him on the radio every day. Marie stayed at Etienne's house, cared for by a kind housekeeper. Besides learning radio from Etienne, Marie helped him gather intelligence. One day, the housekeeper suddenly died of a heart attack, leaving Marie alone in the vast house as Etienne continued his resistance activities. Although she began to feel despondent, she persevered in her broadcasts, providing intelligence and informing Daniel she was still there. But Daniel never returned because he was captured by the Gestapo upon arriving in Paris. Reinhold, a Nazi officer, went to the museum after the Nazis took Paris, finding the manager who hadn't had time to flee.
Go to this address. If there are women and children, shoot them if this man doesn't return home in 30 minutes.
Reinhold interrogated the manager about who took all the gems from the museum. Fearing for his family's safety, the manager truthfully said that the vault supervisor sent all the gems to Geneva, and that the most precious gem, the Sea of Flames, was taken by Daniel, whose blind daughter was missing. Despite telling everything he knew, Reinhold locked the door, preventing the manager from saving his loved ones. This was the curse of the Sea of Flames. Daniel was imprisoned and tortured to reveal the gem's location, but he remained silent because the gem was hidden in the model he made for Marie. He couldn't disclose his daughter's whereabouts. Now Reinhold had finally found a clue about Marie. He arrived in St. Malo, searching everywhere for her. Under the threat of money and a gun, a woman revealed Marie's whereabouts. At that moment, Marie was by the sea. digging for oysters to eat. Daniel used to bring her there, and she loved the taste of the fresh oysters. But Reinhold found her, demanding the location of the Sea of Flames. Reinhold's desperate search for the gem was due to his terminal illness. He believed in the legend that only the gem could cure him. Reinhold didn't dare to shoot Marie as he needed to find the gem. But since Marie wasn't cooperating, he decided to teach her a lesson. Marie pretended to faint in the water but picked up a stone, hitting Reinhold's head, and she escaped. Eventually, she met Werner, but Etienne wouldn't let Werner see Marie. Although Werner had killed a Nazi officer, he was still a German soldier. Etienne made him remove his uniform and took him away for interrogation. Marie went to the door, feeling the information to be sent tonight, then locked the door securely. Etienne took Werner to a secret base, questioning why he was interested in Marie. Werner's response left Etienne astounded. Realizing how small the world truly was, Werner wasn't interested in Marie, but in the broadcast channel. He is an orphan, having grown up in an orphanage with his sister. He is also an exceptionally talented radio prodigy. He liked listening to a French radio channel where the broadcaster would explain the mysteries of the world, such as how coal is formed and what light is. He was deeply immersed in all of this, but his frequent listening to foreign channels attracted the attention of the Gestapo.
And you are the reason I'm here. They say you're a genius.
The officers took Werner away, but it wasn't about the foreign radio. They wanted Werner to fix the officer's wife's radio. If Werner could fix the radio, his charges would be dropped. However, if he failed, he would be shot on the spot, and he had no tools at his disposal. Werner had to figure it out on his own. Suddenly, Werner had an idea and used a piece of chewed, flavorless gum from his pocket to connect the loose wires. The radio immediately started working. Werner thought he had narrowly escaped, but a few days later, the officer came back for him. This time, he was to be taken to a military academy. Fixing the radio had been a test to see if Werner was indeed a radio prodigy. Werner was taken to the National Education Institute, and his life changed from that moment. Now, in St. Malo, he met the person he had always wanted to see. Etienne was satisfied with Werner's answers and decided to keep him in the basement until the other members of the organization returned for a trial. Etienne promised to explain that Werner was forced into the war. Reinhold returned to the woman who had helped him bandage his wounds. Hearing that Reinhold wanted to find a gem from Marie, the woman expressed her own terms. Having been involved with many German soldiers, she feared execution by the Allies. If Reinhold could help her escape, she would reveal Marie's whereabouts. At that moment, Marie was unaware she had been exposed. She had just broadcasted the latest intelligence and shared some words of longing for Daniel, as usual, but Reinhold was already downstairs, kicking the door in rhythm with the Allied artillery fire. Meanwhile, Werner recognized Etienne's voice. It was the broadcaster who had taught him about the world. The other members of the resistance had arrived, ready to hold Werner's final trial, except for Etienne. No one believed Werner, all thinking he was just a war criminal slaughtering civilians. They didn't want to hear Werner's explanations, preferring to execute him on the spot. The artillery fire grew louder as the Allies approached the city gates, but Etienne stood firm, determined to protect Werner. At the same time, Reinhold finally kicked the door open. Reinhold climbed the stairs step by step as Marie locked her room door and barricaded it with a cabinet. Reinhold cornered her, demanding the gem's location. He was running out of patience, and Marie could only pray for Etienne's quick return. But Etienne had been severely injured by a shell, using his last strength to tell Werner to protect Marie until the Allies arrived. Werner ran towards Marie's house as fast as he could but was knocked unconscious by falling shells. Reinhold began taunting Marie, telling her he had tortured Daniel for 3 hours, but Daniel kept the secret until his death. Marie was heartbroken but resolute. Even if it meant her death, she wouldn't reveal the gem's location. In truth, she didn't know where the gem was. She opened a metal box Etienne had left for her and found a gun. Reinhold didn't expect Marie to actually fire the gun, so he hesitated to rush in, opting to use a grenade to blast the door open instead. His voice guided Marie, who lost her hearing temporarily due to the explosion. Reinhold stopped making any noise, preparing to use the grenade to render Marie temporarily deaf so she wouldn't be a threat. He warned her to stay clear, or she would be killed, and the gem's location would remain unknown. Werner regained consciousness and ran towards Marie's house through the bombed-out city. Unwavering in his determination to save Marie and fulfill Etienne's dying wish, Reinhold pulled the pin on the grenade, and the explosion temporarily deafened Marie. Holding the gun, she aimed forward, unable to hear Reinhold's movements. Werner arrived and called out Marie's name loudly. Reinhold forced him back with his gun, then quietly moved towards Marie, but he stepped on a piece of glass, and the sound led Marie to shoot in his direction. Werner's arrival bought Marie some time, and her hearing partially returned. Reinhold decided to eliminate Werner first before dealing with Marie. He headed downstairs, but Marie could hear each step, loudly guiding Werner. Werner waited for Reinhold at the bottom, choking him with a wire. In their struggle, they knocked over the city model, and Reinhold saw the gem inside it. Desperate, he managed to free himself, ready to shoot Werner, but heard the sound of a gun being cocked behind him.
You just have to listen. Everything has a voice.
Reinhold fell, seeing the sea of flames gem before him. Werner saw it too, reaching for it, but Marie stopped him. She didn't want this brave boy who saved her to fall under the gem's curse. Werner sat in front of the radio, the same spot where Etienne had awakened him to a world beyond war. They talked like long-lost friends, discussing everything Etienne had taught them. Werner repaired the radio, playing the music Etienne used to broadcast, and expressed his longing for his sister, who heard it from afar. Marie extended her hand to Werner, and they embraced tightly. They were each other's light. Though the Allies had entered the city, Werner, as a German soldier, had to face consequences. They promised to meet after the war ended, with Werner listening to the familiar radio channel until then. Werner surrendered with a white flag and was taken by the Allies. It was uncertain if he would ever see Marie again. Marie picked up the sea of flames with a handkerchief and carefully stored it. She then walked to the sea and threw the cursed gem into the water. In this broken world, beautiful flowers still bloom, and some hold on to their beliefs in beauty. Despite the harsh reality, there is light that shines upon the world. Those who bring warmth to the world are the ones who hold on to their beliefs even in adversity. There will always be a ray of light in some corner of the world, the light that we cannot see. I am a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel. See you in the next episode.